primary care in America is being consolidated as these major companies and corporations buy up doctors' groups and even private practitioners who are operating, their own private business. Now, this is an issue because the consolidation usually translates to less options and poor care. And we're also talking about primary care doctors who typically, in the medical industry, get paid the least and are incredibly overworked. But when it comes to the profits they bring in for hospitals, and in this case, corporations, let's just say that big capital sees dollar signs. So this is what's happening. It was a great report, by the way, in the New York Times. This is a good example of some of the good reporting they do. And just to give you a sense of how widespread this has become, between 2010 and 2011, the total capital raised for private investment in primary care in the United States increased by a factor of more than 1,000, from 15 million to 16 billion with a B. Okay, so that gives you a sense of how much money is being poured into this. And I'll tell you who some of the biggest players are. CVS Health, of course, with its sprawling pharmacy business and ownership of the major insurer Aetna, paid roughly $11 billion to buy Oak Street Health, a fast-growing chain of primary care centers that employs doctors in 21 states. And Amazon's bold purchase of One Medical, another large doctors group, for nearly $4 billion is another such move. Now, remember, there's also this privatized Medicare model, which is something else that it's like a perk for these corporations because it allows for them to essentially overcharge the Medicare system through Medicare Advantage. I'll give you the details on how that happens in just a moment. But Cenk, just when you think that the privatized healthcare model, the for-profit healthcare model in America couldn't get worse, here we are. They always find ways to make it worse.
100%. So in this case, when you see some of the top finance people in the world pouring in 1,000 times bigger investment into an area, into a sector, that means they find that to be an attractive place to invest. Why do they find it to be an attractive place to invest? Because they think that there are efficiencies to be found. Now, what does that mean? And efficiency means, well, we're gonna cut our costs and we're gonna raise our prices. And that because they think that the costs are too high, the services are too high, there's too many employees and not enough revenue. So that's why they rush in and they pump up the prices on you guys. They cut the employees so you have less employees to help you. And then they cut services to you and they go, boom, efficiencies.
Yep.
So I just made a lot more money by making sure you got way less and you paid me more for it. That's why they're getting 1,000 times the number of investments in there, because they figured out the government ain't gonna help you. Nobody's gonna help you. We could just come in and rob you.
By the way, for our audio audience, I totally misspoke even though I read it clearly. The numbers that I gave you earlier was from 2010 to 2021, not 2011. And so yeah, it went from 15 million in 2010 to 16 billion in 2021. Now, I wanna give you a few other examples, including insurance giant United Healthcare, which is of course another clear example of these consolidated services. So United Health Group owns the major insurer that has nearly 50 million customers in the United States and oversees its ever expanding subsidiary, Optum, which has bought up networks of doctors and medical sites. Optum can send patients from one of its roughly 70,000 doctors to one of its urgent care or surgery centers. You guys see how this game is played, right? So essentially they use the primary care doctors to feed more business into the other medical services provided by this like medical conglomerate. That's a good way of thinking about it, right? So if we're thinking about CVS Health, for instance, the primary care physicians who work under the umbrella of CVS Health would then write the prescriptions and urge the patient to fill their prescriptions where? At Costco or CVS Health? They'd fill the prescriptions at CVS, one-stop shop. Find ways to have certain elements of the business feed more business to other elements of the business. Like that's the way that they're doing this.
Yeah, that's called synergies. And guys, look, I said they use this to rob you in the past. So what do I mean by that? That sounds, mainstream media would say that sounds hyperbolic. These are lovely, legitimate business interests here. They're just improving efficiencies, et cetera, right? Well, the government is supposed to protect you. That's what regulations are. There are laws that apply to businesses. And there's supposed to be a cop on Wall Street too. And they're supposed to say, hey, here's the minimum number of services you have to offer if you're gonna do X. Hey, you can't create a monopoly. You call it a synergy, I call it a monopoly. It depends though, it depends on the facts, the circumstances, et cetera. But there's supposed to be a cop on that beat to look out for you guys, especially on healthcare where your life is on the line, right? But all the cops, well, they did defund the police. It was just the police on Wall Street, right? And so now, because the Republicans did that, there's no one here to protect you. So they will increase those prices, they will lower the services, they will do all of these things. They'll direct you to only their stuff, not anybody else's stuff, because they're gonna make more money doing that, and no one's stopping them.
So Elizabeth Warren is urging the Federal Trade Commission to take a closer look at these deals, because of the consolidation and the monopolization of the healthcare industry. She feels that the FTC might be able to do something about this. We'll see. I mean, so far the FTC clearly hasn't blocked any of these acquisitions through antitrust grounds, but Elizabeth Warren has noticed it. I would like to see a more aggressive fight in preventing this from happening, from preventing this consolidation from happening. And then the final thing I wanted to just quickly get into was how this is also robbing the taxpayer through Medicare Advantage, which is the privatized model of Medicare, right? It might be publicly funded, but it is privately run. That's how Medicare Advantage works. And so the growing privatization of Medicare is alluring to these corporate giants. More than half of Medicare's 60 million beneficiaries have signed up for Medicare Advantage, which is the privatized version of Medicare. It is privately run, but publicly funded. And it turns out that they're, overcharging because they get away with it. And that program, Medicare Advantage, is now basically leading to the federal government paying insurers about $400 billion a year. Amazon's One Medical scooped up a practice specializing in Medicare Advantage. Only about 5% of One Medical's 836,000 members are enrolled in that federal program, but roughly half of its revenue comes from that tiny slice of patients, according to its 2022 financial statements. It's insane.
It's so frustrating. Look, I'll end on a ray of hope. Normally most political stories end with no hope, but in this case, Elizabeth Warren might not be wrong. We'll see. But at least we got a fighter's chance because we're always fair. You see us criticizing Biden a lot, but there's a couple of things he has done right. His labor board is strong, and the person he put in charge of antitrust is pretty strong.
Lena Khan, right?
Yes. So let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Open mind, and there are good folks in there. And by the way, guys, please do nuance. Like if folks tell you, I don't get it, are you for Biden or against Biden? The answer should always be, it depends. What's the policy? Did he do it well or did he do it poorly? So in this case, there's a little bit of hope, and that's about as much as you could hope for in today's politics. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.